Welcome to Zoe Crossdressing. The alarm exploded into the stillness of dawn, its shrill cry slicing through the quiet. From beneath the blankets, a hand lunged out, slapping blindly until the noise finally died. Christian let out a low groan and pushed himself upright, blinking away sleep. His eyes drifted to the calendar tacked above his desk. September 2nd, 2004. First day of school. A tight knot twisted in his stomach, part nerves, part anticipation. New school years were never easy for him, but this one carried a strange weight. Over the summer, he'd spent hours working with Mrs. Lindsay, a teacher trained to help students like him navigate the chaos of classrooms. She'd taught him grounding techniques, routines, ways to keep the noise and pressure from overwhelming him. Christian lowered his feet to the floor, the cool wood sending a jolt through his body. He paused, closed his eyes, and breathed in slowly, just like Mrs. Lindsay had taught him. That's when it happened. A sensation brushed the edges of his thoughts. Not a voice exactly, more like a presence, delicate and familiar, hovering just beyond reach. "Josephine," he whispered without meaning to. Silence followed. And yet, somewhere deep inside his mind, he sensed the faint echo of music, distant and haunting, like a melody remembered from a dream. Christian frowned and shook his head. These moments had been happening more often lately, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't explain them. He headed into the bathroom and caught his reflection. Tousled brown hair. A face marked with pillow lines. Blue eyes, lighter than he remembered. For a split second, the mirror showed something else too. Softer. Different. Almost like another version of him staring back. Then it vanished. "Christian, breakfast," his mom called from downstairs. "Coming," he answered, snapping back to reality. He brushed his teeth, smoothed his hair, and pulled on the clothes he'd picked out the night before, a blue t-shirt and jeans. Yet as he dressed, unease crept in. The fabric didn't sit the way it usually did. The jeans felt oddly loose around his hips. Just nerves, he told himself. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled like pancakes and coffee. His mother stood at the stove, flipping the last pancake onto a neatly stacked tower. She turned, smiling. "Morning, sweetheart. Ready for your big day?" Christian slid into his chair and nodded. "As ready as I can be." His father peeked over the edge of his newspaper. "You'll do great. Mrs. Lindsay really helped you this summer." "She did," Christian said, reaching for the syrup. As he lifted the bottle, a strange warmth moved through him, almost like someone else was guiding his hands, steadying them. He hesitated, then continued, unaware that this was only the beginning. Instead of reaching for his usual glass of milk, Christian poured himself orange juice. He didn't even realize what he was doing until the carton was back in the fridge. Then there was the pancakes, neatly divided into perfect, measured squares instead of the uneven strips he always cut. His mother paused mid-bite. "That's new," she said gently. "I thought you liked them in strips." Christian stared down at his plate, his chest tightening. I don't know why I did that." A quiet laugh rippled through his thoughts, soft, musical, unmistakable. His fingers tightened around his fork. Josephine. The name sent a shiver through him. He didn't understand who she was or why she felt so close, but the certainty frightened him. Breakfast blurred past after that, the clink of plates and casual conversation fading into background noise. Before he knew it, he was standing at the bus stop, backpack heavy against his shoulders. As he waited, an unfamiliar urge bubbled up inside him. He began humming, a tune he had never learned, yet somehow knew. The melody flowed effortlessly, bittersweet and beautiful, pulling him into its rhythm. His body swayed without permission. "That's pretty," someone said. Christian jolted, cutting the tune short. Emma stood beside him, smiling. "Oh, thanks," he muttered, warmth flooding his face. She studied him for a moment, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You look different today." Did you change your hair? He lifted a hand to it instinctively. It did feel softer. Lighter. No. I don't think so, he said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. The bus hissed to a stop, rescuing him from more questions. As he climbed aboard, a sharp tingling spread through his body, starting in his chest and radiating outward. The world tilted. He grabbed the seat in front of him, breathing shallowly. Hey, are you okay? Emma asked, concern creasing her brow. Christian nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He slid into an empty seat and leaned his head against the cool glass. The dizziness faded, but warmth lingered beneath his skin, like a quiet glow refusing to disappear. It's starting, a voice whispered inside him. Josephine. What's starting? He asked silently. No answer came. The rest of the school day drifted by in a strange fog, new teachers, schedules, the usual first-day chaos. Yet something was different. Christian noticed things he usually missed, shifts in tone, fleeting expressions, the unspoken rules moving beneath conversations. In math class, his hand rose before he could stop it. His teacher blinked in surprise. Excellent, Christian. That's a very thoughtful answer. A rush of pride surged through him, too sharp, too intense. It didn't feel entirely his. It felt shared. At lunch, he sat with his usual friends, but instead of withdrawing, he leaned in. He laughed. He spoke up. He met eyes without flinching. Michael nudged him playfully. Dude, what's up with you today? You're different. Christian shrugged, unsure how to explain what he didn't understand himself. Just feeling good, I guess. The words sounded hollow even as he said them. When the final bell rang, relief tangled with dread. He'd survived the day, but the unanswered questions weighed heavier now. On the ride home, he claimed a seat near the back of the bus and closed his eyes, searching his thoughts for clarity. All he found was warmth, and the quiet certainty that whatever was happening to him had only just begun. All at once, everything seemed to collide inside his head. A sharp, crystal-clear image burst into Christian's thoughts, a girl standing before a mirror. Long, wavy brown hair framed her face, and a pair of blue eyes, his eyes, looked back with quiet recognition. The vision disappeared as suddenly as it came, leaving him breathless, fingers clenched in his lap. Who are you? He whispered. He wasn't sure if the question was meant for Josephine, or for the girl who had just vanished. The days that followed slipped together like watercolors bleeding into one another. Each morning brought changes so subtle they were easy to dismiss, yet impossible to ignore. At night, his dreams grew sharper, more intense, always centered around her. And slowly, he realized something unsettling. He wasn't watching the girl anymore. He was her. One night, the dream placed him in the middle of a birthday celebration. Laughter filled the room. Candles flickered atop a cake. Familiar faces surrounded him, friends, family, but something felt off. The song echoed warmly through the air. Happy birthday to you. They weren't singing to Christian. They were singing to Melissa. He looked down and froze. His body was different, gentler, softer, reshaped in ways that felt both unfamiliar and deeply right. Long hair spilled over his shoulders. When he caught his reflection in a darkened window, the girl from his visions stared back at him, smiling faintly. Make a wish, Melissa, his mother said fondly. Melissa leaned forward and blew out the candles. Christian jolted awake, his heart hammering. The dream clung to him, heavy and vivid, refusing to fade. He staggered into the bathroom and flicked on the light, gripping the sink as he studied his reflection. For just a heartbeat, he swore he saw her instead. What's happening to me? He whispered. A calm, familiar voice answered from within. You're becoming who you've always been. Josephine. In the weeks that followed, the changes became harder to explain away. Christian's voice softened, losing its rough edges. His hair grew quickly, and the idea of cutting it filled him with quiet resistance. Clothes shifted strangely on his body, no longer sitting the way they used to. People noticed. After class one afternoon, Emma caught up with him, concern clear in her eyes. "Christian. I hope this isn't weird, but are you okay? You've seemed different lately." He hesitated, searching for words that didn't yet exist. I think I'm changing," he said finally. "I just don't fully understand it." She smiled gently. "Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." As weeks turned into months, Christian began slipping more naturally into the name Melissa. It felt right in a way nothing else ever had. She explored softer clothes, fabrics that felt comforting against her skin. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she practiced makeup in secret, watching herself transform with equal parts wonder and fear. Josephine was always there, guiding, reassuring, never forcing. Then, during one quiet moment of reflection, a realization settled into Melissa's mind with stunning clarity. "Josephine, you've never been separate from me, have you? You're not someone else. You're me." Warmth flooded her chest. "Yes," the voice replied, but now it sounded exactly like her own. "I'm the part of you that always knew the truth. The part that waited until you were ready." For the first time in her life, Melissa felt still, whole, and at peace. The scattered pieces of her life finally began to make sense. The unease, the distance she'd always felt while living as Christian, it all had a name now, a shape. She wasn't broken. She had never been lost. She had simply been waiting to understand herself. Telling her parents was the hardest step Melissa had ever taken. One quiet evening, she asked them to sit with her. Her hands trembled as she folded them together, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. "Mom. Dad," her voice wavered, but she pushed through. "There's something I need to tell you. Something important." She swallowed. "I'm transgender. I'm a girl. My name is Melissa." The silence stretched painfully long. Melissa barely breathed, watching their faces shift, surprise, uncertainty, fear, until something gentler emerged beneath it all. Her mother moved first, reaching across the table and taking Melissa's shaking hand. "Thank you for trusting us," she said softly. "We love you. Always." Her father nodded, blinking hard. "We may have a lot to learn," he admitted, voice thick with emotion, "but we're not going anywhere. We'll face this together." The relief hit Melissa all at once. She broke down in their arms, tears spilling freely as years of fear, confusion, and quiet suffering finally released their grip. The months that followed were anything but simple. There were therapist appointments, medical consultations, long conversations about hormones and paperwork, names and pronouns. Some friendships faded, unable to survive the change, but others grew stronger. Emma never wavered, offering steady support when Melissa needed it most. Mrs. Lindsay remained a guiding force too, advocating fiercely within the school system, helping Melissa navigate both her transition and her autism with compassion and determination. As her reflections slowly began to match how she felt inside, Melissa discovered something new: confidence. The constant anxiety that once followed her everywhere loosened its hold. Life wasn't suddenly perfect, but it was finally honest. And that made all the difference. 1 year after the morning everything began, Melissa stood before her mirror and barely recognized the person she used to be. Long brown hair framed her face, soft and unmistakably feminine. Her blue eyes shone, not with uncertainty, but with quiet joy. She slipped into a flowing sundress, smiling as the fabric moved around her legs. "Ready for your first day of school as yourself?" her mother called from downstairs. Melissa smoothed the dress and inhaled deeply. "Ready," she answered, her voice steady and sure. On her way down, she paused in the hallway. A framed photo hung on the wall, Christian, from another lifetime. She studied it for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. for holding on long enough for me to exist." With one last glance at her reflection, Melissa stepped outside into the bright September morning. The presence she once called Josephine no longer felt separate, it lived within her now, a quiet certainty, a guiding truth. As she walked toward the bus stop, her steps felt lighter than ever before. The world seemed sharper, brighter, more alive, like she was finally seeing it clearly for the very first time. And this time, she was ready. For the first time, everything felt sharp and clear. Melissa hummed under her breath, the same haunting melody that had once drifted through her mind like a question. Now it felt like an answer. Emma was already waiting at the bus stop. Her face lit up the moment she spotted Melissa. "Wow," Emma said, pulling her into a warm hug. "You look incredible." Melissa laughed softly, heat rising to her cheeks. "Thanks. I feel incredible." They climbed onto the bus together, and Melissa took a moment to reflect. A year ago, she had been lost, uncertain, afraid, carrying questions she couldn't name. That version of herself felt far away now. In her place stood someone grounded, steady, and finally at ease. School unfolded in a rush of introductions and explanations. A few students stared. Some whispered. But many smiled, offered encouragement, or simply treated her like she belonged. Her teachers, prepared thanks to Mrs. Lindsay, used her name and pronouns without pause, and each small acknowledgement felt like a quiet victory. In her final class, English, the teacher announced a new assignment. "I want you to write about a transformation," she said. "It can be real or imagined. Literal or symbolic." Melissa smiled as her pen touched the page. She didn't hesitate. She had lived that story. When the final bell rang, she packed her bag with a sense of pride. She had made it through her first full day as herself, and instead of falling apart, the world had opened up. Walking home from the bus stop, Melissa lifted her face toward the warm September sun and closed her eyes, breathing it in. The voice that had once called itself Josephine, now inseparable from her own thoughts, spoke softly inside her. "You did it." Melissa smiled. "No," she replied silently. "We did." At her front door, she paused, hand resting on the knob. She thought about the fear, the confusion, the courage it had taken to arrive here. The path ahead wouldn't be effortless, she knew that, but for the first time, she felt whole. She stepped inside. As Melissa settled into her new life, she noticed something unexpected. The challenges tied to her autism, once so overwhelming, felt more manageable now. The strategies Mrs. Lindsay had taught her worked better when she wasn't spending every ounce of energy pretending to be someone else. Sensory overload still happened. Social cues were still tricky. But they no longer felt impossible. Her family grew closer too. Her parents, true to their promise, educated themselves and became fierce advocates for their daughter. Family game nights, once stressful, turned into something Melissa genuinely looked forward to, moments of laughter instead of tension. At school, her focus sharpened. Her grades improved. Confidence replaced avoidance. And every time Melissa caught her reflection in the mirror, there was no mystery left to solve. The girl staring back was real. She was here. And she was ready for whatever came next. She found it easier to concentrate now, easier to raise her hand, to speak, to stay present. The confidence Melissa had discovered through living authentically spilled naturally into her schoolwork, and subjects that once felt impossible slowly became areas where she thrived. One afternoon, as she gathered her things after her weekly check-in, Mrs. Lindsay called after her. "Melissa, wait a moment." She turned, curious. "Yes?" Mrs. Lindsay smiled, the kind that carried genuine pride. "I just wanted you to know how impressed I am. Not only with your transition, but with how you've grown in understanding yourself, your autism, your strengths, your needs. And academically? You're doing wonderfully." Warmth spread through Melissa's chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I really couldn't have done it without you." Mrs. Lindsay shook her head. I gave you tools. You did the work. Don't forget that. As Melissa walked down the hallway, she realized the feeling settling inside her wasn't relief or surprise. It was pride. The months passed quickly, and before she knew it, September arrived again. Preparing for her second year of high school, Melissa paused to take in her room. How different it looked now. What had once felt empty and borrowed finally felt like hers. Posters lined the walls. Photos captured laughter and friendships. A small vanity sat in the corner, makeup scattered across its surface, still a learning process, but one she enjoyed. Her closet held clothes that made her feel comfortable, confident, and real. On her nightstand stood a framed photo from her first day of school as Melissa. She was standing between her parents, all three of them smiling wide. It was nothing like the stiff, distant school photos from years before. As she got ready that morning, Melissa caught herself humming the familiar melody, the one that had once felt mysterious and unsettling. Now it felt reassuring, like a quiet reminder of how far she'd come. She bounded down the stairs, energy light in her step. Morning, Mom. Morning, Dad. Her mother looked up from her coffee, smiling. Good morning, sweetheart. Ready? More than ready, Melissa replied, grinning. Her father folded his newspaper, eyes warm with pride. You've grown so much, Melissa. We're incredibly proud of you. Her throat tightened. She crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around both of them. I love you, she said softly. As she pulled away, her reflection caught her eye in the kitchen window. The girl looking back wasn't unfamiliar or uncertain. She was happy. Confident. Whole. Melissa smiled, not at a dream, not at a memory, but at herself. With a final wave, she stepped outside into the bright September morning, ready to face whatever the new year would bring. She was Melissa. She was autistic. She was transgender. And for the first time in her life, she felt completely at peace. As she walked toward the bus stop, the voice that had once felt separate whispered gently from within, not guiding her anymore, but simply walking beside her. She smiled and kept going. Josephine, no longer a separate voice, but woven seamlessly into her own thoughts, spoke softly within her. This is only the beginning. Melissa smiled, her stride confident and sure. I know, she replied silently. And I'm ready for whatever comes next. The road ahead was wide and full of possibility. There would be obstacles, there always were, but Melissa carried something she hadn't before, clarity, support, and a deep understanding of herself. That made all the difference. With that certainty in her heart, she moved forward, open to the future, grounded in who she was, and excited for what lay ahead. Thanks for watching.